Screen and play. There we go. Oh, all right. Well, thanks for watching today, everyone. Today, February 11th. And Deb and I are going to talk about who do I represent? We both get these questions all of the time. Buyer's agent, seller's agent, dual agent. Who do you work for in what situations? It will give you some tips and ideas and legalities and things to try to avoid and if you can. So,
Yeah.
Deb, jump into it.
Yeah, we just want to try and help you guys clarify what's a client and what's a customer. So this first part's going to come directly from OAR. The relationship formed between the agent and the client is called a fiduciary relationship, taking you back to your beginning roots here as real estate agents. Real estate agents must safeguard the client's interests by protecting them through obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accountability, and reasonable skill and care. Old car, remember old car, y'all? Let's make
I
sure that we're
like it.
practicing that, right? That's a
I
client.
I do remember that. Now I remember it. You reminded me.
If you look at the things, it's old car.
Yeah,
And
no, I
then
saw that.
customers
Okay.
are now
Okay.
think about this, right? So a client is old car, but customers are hard, HARD, because with customers, we want to make sure that we are giving them honesty, accounting, reasonable care and skill, and disclose material facts, but they're not our clients, right? So
Ex-
your loyalty is to your client, but you do have to be uh, conscientious of what you're saying to customers, right? Which could
Exactly.
be hard if you want to remember it that way.
Yeah.
With the exception of concerning material facts, agents cannot provide advice or counsel to customers. That would breach their fiduciary duty to the seller client agents and can provide information about lenders, inspectors, or other similar vendors, market information, or information from the listing or public records. So there's our definitions of the two.
Yeah.
Now let's get into a couple different scenarios about what's a customer and what's a client. Okay, so if you're a customer, uh, first of all, before we even get into that, Tony, I have a listing and I have a buyer that comes to me directly and they said they don't have an agent. Is that my customer, or would that be my customer, or would that be my client?
You're a customer
And why would that be my
because
customer?
your client and agency relationship is with the seller, and you're looking out for their best interest and trying to get them the best price or highest price and best terms for them. And let me just jump in. What I usually say to try to make it simple, or not simple, this is all good, but is that when in that scenario, basically everything this buyer says to you, your customer, you have to tell your client everything they say, and you have to analyze it. So if a customer walks in the door and they say, wow, this they're only offering they're only asking 200,000 for this house, I'd pay 220. You have to tell that to your client because you're looking out for their best interest. Now if your client, your seller, said to you, well, I have the house listed for 200,000 but I'd go as low as 180, you don't tell that to the customer, the buyer, because you don't represent them. You're not looking out for their best interest in regards to price and conditions of the house. Now you have back to the hard, you have to be ethical and help them and be work for them. But that's if that, just before we went into the list, I wanted to go into that like example. But go ahead, Deb.
That is perfect. And that's a perfect segue of what we're talking about. What is our loyalty to a customer versus what is our loyalty to a client? A lot of agents get confused because they think that if a buyer contacts them right away, they're a client. They're not a client unless you sign your agreement with them and you're working specifically for their interest. You can still get paid for doing all of the work. And I think that's where everybody gets confused. So we'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. So customers, I represent the seller. You have uh,
A buyer
a listing
customer, yeah.
agreement with the seller, right? Which is what we just said. So a buyer comes to you directly, you're going to tell them, I represent the seller. I
What-
can show you the home though, if you don't have an agent, right?
Yeah, and I just want to jump in too, just to say that you have to be one, right? You can't have like, it's a listing agent, there's someone listing agent and you have a buyer that's just a customer. No, then they're the client. You have to be, you have to be represent one of them, right?
Yes.
So that's what I say. It says, when a buyer is a customer, you're automatically means that you represent and are the listing agent and represent the client. There's no way to not do that.
Either one, right?
Either one, right. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So even when you're doing a for sale by owner situation, which we're jumping ahead a little bit, but for sale by owner situation would be you represent the buyer, right? So we're flipping
Mhm.
to the right side of the screen. For sale by owner, you're representing that buyer. You're still going to be talking to the seller and doing everything, but your loyalty is going to be to the buyer. So client is your loyalty. Customer is just someone who comes in because they don't have a representation and wants you to help with everything. You can, but you got to stay within your scope, right? So when
Exactly.
your buyer is a customer, you're going to give them complete loyalty to the seller's needs, right? So you're going to basically be paying attention to the seller. You're being obligated to relay all information from the buyer to the seller. You must provide material facts, but can't offer advice or opinion about the property. So when you get your general home inspection and the customer is the buyer, they have to make their own choices. Okay. No price counseling. You're not going to counsel that buyer on the price. You're going to counsel your client who is the seller on that price. No CMA unless it supports the seller's price. Suggestions made regarding financing and other terms must benefit the seller. Don't forget now, our loyalty is to the seller. I know this sounds harsh, but that's why they're a customer, right? So stay in your scope there. We'll work to close the transaction to satisfy the seller. That's
Exactly.
when the customer is the buyer and you represent the seller. Now, when you represent the buyer and the seller has no representation, you're for sale by owner kind of situation, you're complete loyal to the buyer's needs. Your confidentiality is going to be that the buyer can speak freely, but or the seller can speak freely, but you're going to tell everything to the buyer on that particular instance, right? Advice and opinions along material facts are going to go with the buyer's side. You can provide price counseling in the CMA because the buyer is your client. They signed that exclusive right to represent. Suggestions will be made in the buyer client's best interest. You're going to prepare the offer and negotiate on behalf of the buyer, and you'll work closely in the transaction to satisfy the buyer. So those are the definitions based on what OAR wants you to remember on who is a customer and who is a client. So say, here's another another scenario, Tony. So say I have a listing and I
Mhm.
also have a buyer that I've been showing around. We have an exclusive buyer's agency agreement and he wants to see my listing. Who is he then?
That he's got a buyer agreement with another agent.
No, with me, but
Oh,
it's
then
my
then you're
listing.
basically a dual agent.
Perfect. That's where we're getting at. That's the only time you're a dual agent, right? You have a
Yeah.
listing, your
Yeah.
buyer who you have an exclusive buyer's agency agreement with and a relationship with already, so you know stuff, wants to see your listing,
Yeah.
then you have to go neutral.
Or it's somebody, I mean, maybe usually you're working with it, but same thing, buyer calls you up, but it's one of your past buyers or someone you've been
Yes.
cultivating for years and say, I want you to show that house, but you already know financial stuff about them. You know something about them that would put them, you're, at a disadvantage, like, hypothetically, wow, these people, I get back $200,000, 200 a house, and these people, from your relationship could afford a $500,000 house. You know something, so you always jump in with, like, say it's your own listing and a buyer comes in. That's why you have them sign an unrepresented buyer form as soon as possible, explaining to them, don't tell you anything. I think, does ours have that right on top? I forgot.
Yes.
It says, don't tell me anything. Because sometimes buyers, unrepresented buyers, or customers, might talk to you too much, and knock on wood, there's never any legal issues, but they before you send them a consumer guide, before you send them an unrepresented buyer, they start telling you their whole life story, thinking you're going to represent them, could put you in some type of liability if there's problems, because you talk to them too much without disclosing the consumer guide and without disclosing the unrepresented buyer of what they should and shouldn't say to you, if that makes sense.
That is absolutely perfect, and that's what we were going to talk about next. So, for those of you who need a little recap of that, he was talking about the unrepresented buyer agreement. So, that was the next thing. What do I do if they come to my open house or they come to me directly? You have them sign that document. So, on your exclusive right to sell with your seller, you've already gone over the scenario of, if an unrepresented buyer comes to you, are they going to compensate you? So you've already talked about that with your seller. So
And of
you will
course,
get paid for both sides, right?
course, when you this if the before it even starts, or it just starts, and you're concerned, call Debbie or me.
Yes, yes,
We'll
yes.
walk you through it before you take the next steps, so you make sure to get compensated. Example, in our I had two agents in the last month and a half, our listing agents, that were very surprised themselves because they used our suggested listing agreement with compensation for both sides. When this situation happened, they're like, oh my God, I'm making this. I'm like, yeah, you used our suggestion. And they probably, if they didn't use our suggestion, they might not have filled that out and would have made less money. So, like, oh God, they surprise themselves sometimes.
Yes. I
With
had the
that.
same exact thing happen last week when I was talking to somebody and they're like, "Oh, you mean I get this?" And I'm like, "Yes, this is what you talked about with your seller already. So you do get that. If you
Right.
want to discount it, you can, but they already agreed to it. So you can
Exactly.
charge that total amount."
But,
So I
we
hope
must,
that helps. Yeah,
yeah.
it's not a long conversation, but it was one I feel like we needed to go over because there's so many people that are confused about customers versus dual agency and
But
such like that.
reach out to us, because and you, same thing, Deb. We both get like a call from an agent, or we see a text from an agent. They're like, "Where's a video on this?" I'm like, just if we have time, just talk to us,
Yeah.
then watch a video, because it's different scenarios in that. Like, yeah, I had an agent last night. It's like, okay, our new escrow letter. Where's the video on that? I'm like, just call me. I'll explain it.
The
We're
video is
happy you don't
actually
have
on
to watch a
Homestar
video unless you
Office.
want to watch a video.
Yeah, I
Fine.
did get them all done, so it's on
Good.
Homestar
Yes,
Office.
there's all the videos are on there. Look for Deb's videos on how to fill it out and stuff. But that's, if you don't want to talk, or it's too late at night or a weekend, and stuff. But if it's normal business hours, definitely just
Yeah.
reach out to the office or text the hotline, and we'll go through all of that.
Yep. This one is for everybody out there. You can share it or not, but I wanted you all to understand that February 17th is Random Act of Kindness Day, and I feel that we need this
Sure.
in our
Sure.
lives. There's so much hostility and so many people that are there's just a lot of negativity. So we want to get some positivity out there. Random act of kindness is just that. If you see somebody who needs your help, just go help them for a second. Don't expect anything in return. That's a random act of kindness. So there's a lot of things that you can do. without even realizing it, but you're going to benefit someone else. Even if you just say, my gosh, your hair looks so beautiful today, that brings
Exactly.
a smile to people's faces, right? And that's what we need right now is a lot of positivity and smiles and people being kind to one another. Um, our continuing eds are core law on the 13th with Mike, which is tomorrow, Wednesday. Today,
Wednesday. Yep, no, wait, today's Tuesday, Wednesday,
do I
Thursday.
have it wrong?
Is it
No,
Thursday?
Thursday.
Yep.
He's usually on Wednesdays. That's why he screwed me up. He's doing Thursday this year on February 13th for core law. And then Hash is doing March 6th with why lenders miss closing dates. The 15th is going to be core ethics with Mike. And then more back to April 3rd with the mortgage industry, what real estate agents need to know. These should be good ones because he's giving you tips and tricks about what they're looking for when they're doing lending. And trigger words that terrify real estate agents on May 5th, which probably gets into a deeper dive of lending practices and stuff. So it'll brush everybody up on what's happening in the mortgage industry there, and Mike will take care of a couple of your core classes there in the next month or two.
There we go. Well,
You can
that's it.
always find
Yeah.
those logins on our website that I had listed on there. So you just go there and then you can register for those classes
Right. One
if
of
you
these
want
days we'll
to.
have Mike have his own landing page for these too. Like
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah.
So just in case our links are not there, I know it's easier for Hesh on that, but we'll work on them with that. But
Yeah.
that's it. Thanks for joining us. Remember, this is a very important topic because we want you to make sure your agency is correct, who your client is, who your customers, who you look out for their best interests, when to notify the other people as soon as possible, especially when you're not representing them, and scenarios. This is all scenarios on that. And always reach out to us and we'll give you our best opinion to keep you out of trouble.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
all right. Thanks for
Yep.
joining us, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.